This video is sponsored by Made the Best. More about them later. So I think this is about where I left you guys, cutting out my body shapes and sanding the edges. Then I made my own router templates so that I could amp up my production, and used my router templates to route out all the neck and pickup cavities. We played with some epoxy, and then I quality controlled all my necks to make sure they were good to go. And this is where I left you guys. Now let's see if there are even more ways we can save time and money by manufacturing multiple guitars at once. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, let's get started. Firstly, let's get started rounding and carving these bodies out. Alright, so I'm trying out something a little bit different today. Normally to do the comfort carves, I would just take my angle grinder with a sanding flat disc, but that's going to take forever, especially on 6 back-to-back, and I'm going to go through a lot of sanding flat discs. So, to remove sort of the bulk of the material and just get it close, I'm going to try doing it on the bandsaw. I don't have any jigs or guides set up, so I'm just going to try freehanding it. This could be a disaster, but hopefully it'll be a time saver. Well, since the bandsaw ended up working so well, I'm kind of thinking outside the box. Instead of going straight to the sanding flat disc, I'm going to try using a belt sander. Found this bad boy on Facebook Marketplace for a whopping $5. So we're going to see if I can use that to kind of even this out. I think I'll have a little more control over this than with a flat disc. There's no getting around it. Up here, I'm going to need to use the flat disc, but we're going to put that off as long as possible. We'll see how productive this is. Well, that works very well. And yeah, much more control than the sanding flat disc. But for the most part, I think I can get the rest of it with the orbital. All right, guys, this is the moment I've been putting off for as long as possible. So this base here has fallen behind on production, mostly just because of the epoxy work, which looks really freaking cool. I'm very excited about it. But also because it's a different pickup layout, and I was waiting for my custom wound double J humbucker to arrive to make sure when I made my double J template layout that I make the right size cavity for it. And I'm glad that I did, because if I just doubled up my bridge jazz pickup to make this rear cavity, the spacing would have been off. Because you might notice that the little cutouts for where the screws mount are actually the same as the neck, as opposed to the bridge, which is a little bit wider. So that would have been off. So I'm glad I waited for that pickup before finishing this template. So, but now this template is finished. I also had to do a little bit different neck pocket, which I'll talk about later, why when we are working on the necks, because this one's going to use a little bit different neck profile than the others. But let's try to get this thing caught up and routed out and shaped and back up to speed with the rest of these builds, hopefully. Well, this one is definitely going to win the ugliest electronics cavity contest because I think I need to get a new router bit. This router bit kept slipping no matter how tough I chucked it. Kept slipping and taking out more and more and got down to the point where I thought I was going to punch through. Luckily, I think I still have hopefully about 1/8 of an inch of material here before the other side, but that's a little deeper than I wanted to go. And since I can't seem to get it to hold, I'm just gonna do the rest of it with a chisel. And it's not gonna be pretty, but it'll be functional. And if you're gonna make a mistake like that, I don't think there's any better place than the electronics cavity. Pretty easy to hide. So after doing a tap test, right here, I don't know how thick it is, but it seems pretty thin. So I think what I'm actually gonna do, ooh, I can see my finger through this epoxy right here. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna pour a little more epoxy in here to help stabilize this. All right, now we got a nice layer of epoxy resin in there. I feel much better about that. So now it's time to round it and carve it and get it caught up with the rest. Now it's time to start hand fitting these necks. I already fitted and drilled this one, so this one's good to go. This one I already fitted, so we just need to drill it and get on to the rest of it. Perfect. So you guys might remember in my last video that I intentionally made the neck pocket on my template a tad too tight because I'd rather have the necks not quite fit and then hand fit them so they'd be nice and tight every time. Just in case a neck ever showed up slightly out of spec, I would rather it be too tight than too loose. And you can see in this case, this neck is pretty much a perfect fit. It's a little, I mean, it's still tight enough to lift the body, but anyway. So it's nice that I don't have to hand fit this one neck, but what's really nice is that I don't have to shim the neck pocket to make a tight fit. All right, neck pockets are all done. Now, before I start drilling my holes for all of my neck screws, I'm gonna get started working on these pick guards. All right, I'm started. Back to work on this. Just kidding. Let's talk about this. This is my Orcher Laser Master 2 Pro S2 that I got from madethebest.com. And as you can see, it is working hard for me to cut out my pick guards. I'm using Lightburn software, which is not a free software. If you're a PC user, there is a free software that you can use, but I'm a Mac user, so I had to pay 60 bucks for Lightburn, which is awesome. That was $60 well spent. So you guys haven't seen a lot of CNC technology stuff on my channel because, as you guys know, I am the budget-friendly guy. I am the get by with the bare minimum guy. So when madethebest.com reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to try out their CNC laser engraver, I actually respectfully told them no thank you. Not unless it's capable of cutting through 1/8" craft plywood, because then I could use it to make, you know, electronics cavity covers, pick guards, pickup rings, that kind of stuff. And they actually got back to me and said, yeah, it can do that. And so I looked at it and I looked at the price and I was like, there's no freaking way. Because a CNC laser that is capable of cutting through 1/8" craft plywood, I mean, even just a few years ago, probably would have run you about $2,000 or $3,000. And this thing only costs like $449. And so I told them, yeah, go ahead and send it and we'll just see what happens. I had really low expectations. I didn't think that I was actually going to be using it much on this channel, but it works incredibly well. With the Lightburn computer software, it actually makes it really easy to make pick guards and pickup rings and truss rod covers, all of which I've made. I'm also going to be using it for the back electronic cavity cover as well. And as you can see, it's not the fastest machine, but, you know, having realistic expectations for a less than $500 CNC laser, this thing works extremely well. It cuts out a pick guard in about 10 minutes, which is about how long it takes me to rough cut one. Now, with CNC machines, lasers especially, they have a habit of catching things on fire, so they need to be monitored. So it's not like I could just like take off and run errands, but what I can do is multitask. I can let this thing go and keep an eye on it while I'm working on some other stuff. So there's a link down in the description where you can pick up one of these. I highly recommend you check out MadeTheBest.com. Even if you're not interested in buying this specific laser, they do have ones that are smaller, which a smaller one would be able to cut out, you know, a tele pick guard and pick up rings and truss rod covers and electronics cavity covers, no problem. It might struggle to do larger pick guards like a jazz-based pick guard, which this machine would be capable of. But they also have some other cool, inexpensive CNC technology for, like, you know, 3D printing and stuff like that. So this thing's done. All right, and there we go. A nice clean pick guard. Also down in the description is a coupon code where you can save $10 off your order of $99 or more. So check out MadeTheBest.com. Thank you, Made the Best, for sponsoring this video. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this up to cut another pick guard. And while that's happening, I can work on some other stuff, like drilling all the holes for the neck screws. And before I could even finish drilling all of my neck screw holes, we have a perfect fitting pick guard. You'll notice I haven't cut out any spot for the front pickup. That's because I'm gonna do it the old fashioned way with a bottom bearing router bit. And then same also with the holes for the pots and switches. Because I'm designing these to work with or without a pick guard, I'm just gonna drill through the body and the pick guard at the same time. All right, so here we have 5 pick guards ready to go. I know for a fact at least one of these 6 builds I'm not going to be using a pick guard. I might not use a pick guard on a couple others, but I went ahead and cut them out. I can always use them on future builds. Cutting out the electronics cavity, I'll show you what I did here. I just took a picture of my router template and I went ahead and imported that into Lightburn, and then I traced it out and scaled it down to the right size, and now I have it lined up ready to cut out of the same piece of wood I made my last pick guard. So we'll just go ahead and see how this goes. And start. So this first one was almost perfect. It came out just a little short on the sides and a little long on the bottom. So other than that, it's perfect. So I made a couple adjustments and I'm cutting out a second one. All right, so this time I got the side to side measurements correct, but a little shallow on the width. So third time's a charm. The good news is I think I can use this first one in this elm body because I kind of screwed up the pocket and I made the bottom a little too deep. And so that's actually like a perfect fit right there. I might be able to get away with using that one. And now we have a perfect fit. Cool, third time's a charm. Alright guys, I need your help. Let me know down in the comments what you think about this headstock design. I have a feeling it's going to be one of those things that you either truly love because you can see the functionality of it, or you're truly going to hate because you can't get by the aesthetics of it. But my reason for doing it this way was because I just didn't think that my lefty style angled back headstock complemented this cool offset body shape design. And so I was going more for a 2+2 look, but I still want to have the longest distance be for the low E string or low B string if you play in bead tuning like I do, because it really makes a difference for balanced string tension, having the longest section be on the nut be for the heavier strings and slowly going down to the smallest for the lighter strings. So functionality is there, aesthetics I think is there. I think it really complements the offset body shape, but I think a lot of people are going to have a hard time getting over the reverse 3+1. Obviously 3+1 has been done for years by Music Man. They've just done it 3 on the top, 1 on the bottom, and this layout just makes a lot more sense for string tension. So I got another idea to try out. I got this cool new jig. This is an angled drilling guide jig, and it basically turns your handheld drill into a drill press with the added convenience of being able to choose your angle that you want to drill at. Now this is something that I've always wanted to try, but I didn't exactly know how, is I really want my string through holes for my bridge to come in more at an angle as they go up over the bridge saddles. But this should, in theory, not only help me drill straight, but at the perfect angle where all 4 of these holes will be lined up on the other side of the base. So let's go ahead and give it a try, see what happens. Right. Excellent. That's perfect. Super cool. So I've been racking my brain on how I could potentially make fret work faster and easier when doing multiple fretboards. And I think I have an idea. I'm going to try it out with this neck first, and I'm going to go all the way with it. Level, crown, polish, and then finish the bass, string it up, see how it plays. Before I do any of the others to make sure the process is going to work. But the idea is, instead of making the neck level with your notch straight edge, and then putting a sanding beam on top and going back and forth, what I'm going to try doing is still making sure the neck is perfectly level, and then using a known flat surface, I'm going to put a nice wide strip of sandpaper on and flip it upside down and go back and forth on that. And then I can rock it gently as I'm doing it to make sure that I don't mess up the radius. But that'll give me a much larger surface area of sandpaper to use. And so I think it's going to be more productive. The only problem is the only known flat surface that I have available to me is a giant slab of granite that my father-in-law is holding onto for some reason. All right, well, let's give it a shot. So that worked about as good as expected. I checked with my fret rocker, and right now, all the frets are perfectly level with each other. And so overall, that took me about 8 minutes to do, what would normally take 15 to 20 minutes, I think. But when you think about the grand scheme of, I'm making 6 of these at once, if I did all 6 back to back, I'd get all 6 done in about 48 minutes. And to do them at 15 to 20 minutes a piece would take 1.5 hours to 2 hours. So I may have potentially just picked up an hour, which time is money. So that's a win right there. Unfortunately, from here on out, I'm gonna have to do them one at a time. And I have my leveling beam back out because I am gonna need to tape off above the 12th fret and do those. I don't see a way that I can do a 12th fret taper on a flat piece of granite. So gonna have to do those one at a time. And then of course, crowning and polishing is all a one at a time process as well. And so I think that the bulk fret leveling process is probably the last place in my guitar manufacturing process that I'll be able to save time by doing it in bulk. But before I go ahead and level the rest of them, I'm going to finish this one and finish that bass and get it all strung up and playing and make sure that this process didn't hinder the fret process. Basically, it's better to ruin only one neck instead of all 6. So we're just gonna make sure this works good before we move on to the rest. All right, finished up the fret work, strung this up, did a real crude setup, but yeah, no buzz at all on any of these frets. So frets are good. Boy, I just barely can't reach that 24th fret, even with the scallop. So now that I know that it works properly, I went ahead and used my notch straight edge to make sure all these necks were level, and I added Sharpie to the top, as per usual. Now I'm gonna take them over and level them all together. In theory, I should be able to level all 5 of these necks in about 40 minutes. So let's go test that theory. All right, so doing all 5 of these actually only took me about 35 minutes, which is a little bit faster than I expected. So that's kind of nice. And I just checked with my fret rocker, and I would say that they are mostly good to go. In fact, 3 out of 5 are ready for the next step. They can be taped off and get their 12th fret taper put on. But the other two, they're going to need just a little bit of touch up, and mostly just because I was afraid of taking too much off. So even though I still saw some of the black marker in a couple places, I just went ahead and called it quits because I didn't want to take off too much of the frets. So I'll be touching those up. And like I said earlier, I think from here on out, I'm going to be doing these on an individual basis. And that's because I just don't think that I can sit down and do fret work on 5 necks back to back without wanting to kill myself. So next video, I'm going to see if I can save some time by batch wiring all of the electronic harnesses. But other than that, I'm going to be finishing these up one at a time. So stay tuned if you want to see the end results. I'm Dan, this is Guns and Guitars, and I'll see you in that next video. And don't forget to let me know about that headstock. I really like it.